special edition of Grab a Coffee. Yes, it's a special edition in collaboration with the Media Focused on Africa, as well as the African Center for Media Excellence during the Uganda Media Week 2025. My name is Kasiate, Simon Kasiate, and always joined by
Raymond Mujuni. Did I get that right?
Well, you always do get it wrong, but we'll take it for the fact that you have it right because that's how you prefer to have it. And yes, we're having a very interesting conversation today. It's a conversation that has and stirs, or should we say, brews mixed reactions from different practitioners, but very specifically in the realm of journalism. Artificial intelligence it is, and the questions abound. Is artificial intelligence an enabler of how journalism shall be done, or will it lead to the annihilation of journalism as we have known it? Some argue, rightly so, like with the advent of the internet, that AI is going to be an enabler of good journalism. But then others argue that just like many jobs have been lost to the advancement of technology in many ways, from the Industrial Revolution to date, AI may in fact portend the death of journalism. To make sense of this conversation, we have two incredible guests, and I'm going to ask that Raymond Mujuni introduces the lady on the panel, and then I'll have the honor to introduce the gentleman on the panel. Over to you, Raymond.
There's never a history on this panel of us introducing guests. It's not going to happen. So, Julie, we normally ask our guests first. One, how do you like your coffee if you take coffee in the morning?
Good morning, everybody. I like my coffee extra hot, black, no sugar.
All right. I hope that someone fixes you an extra large black coffee as this panel goes on. Raymond, how do you like your coffee? Please don't say you don't take coffee. Raymond, take coffee.
I actually do enjoy coffee, and I love my coffee strong, black, hot, and no sugar, just like Juliet.
All right, thank you, Julie and Raymond, and we're going to interchangeably ask you questions, but I wanted to start with you, Julie. So many people have announced the death of journalism. Social media announced the death of journalism. The printing press at one point announced the death of journalism. Content creators keep saying, that journalism has died. But for some reason, some people still wake up, they buy the newspaper, they switch on their TV, they listen to the radio. And this art form of delivering news to people has sort of survived all the forms of transformation that have come. Help us understand, will artificial intelligence, in the manner and form it is now, be any different from all those others? And should we be worried? We really don't earn enough, so there's reason to worry.
Well, very good question. Journalism has come close to death so many times over the last, let's call it 100 years. With the printing press, as it evolved to more advanced methods of producing media, that was actually the height of journalism, a very fantastic time of journalism where more information could be replicated, quicker distributed, further. In comes the radio, which complemented print media. But again, there was a stress at that point in time. Fast forward to the introduction of the internet, and everybody was screaming, print is dead, print is dead. But here we are, like you've said, people still wake up in the morning, go out and buy the newspapers. But what we've been seeing over all these shifts and changes in times and technologies is the complementary factor that these new developments have added to the art, I like that you called it that, of journalism. Web came in and complemented journalism, caused a bit of concern, is still causing a bit of concerns, especially in the African landscape, where we have yet to figure out a stronger media viability model. But nonetheless, it has created other opportunities for the practice of journalism. Hence, we sit in the podcast like this. So we have seen shifts, stresses, but also opportunities which we have not really delved enough into. We have tended to focus more on the threats than the opportunities, and that is a problem that we as practitioners perhaps need to reflect upon a whole lot more. and now in enters AI. What does it mean for us right now? It means yet again an opportunity for opportunity, I mean, rather to explore opportunities. But are we doing enough of that? What I've seen is a lot of us talking about AI is taking our jobs, AI is going to kill journalism, as opposed to, well, what does this mean? How should we be looking at this? Is this an opportunity to navigate how we explore languages in the digital economy? Is this an opportunity to explore how we address media viability, perhaps? Is this a way to redefine the practice of media in our African context? Those are some of the questions we should be asking. But at the same time, we're very aware of the power dynamics. We, all through these times, we are relying on technologies not necessarily produced by us. We are the perpetual consumer of these tools. And yet again, we are consumers of AI tools. But what does that mean in the broader scheme of things? Should we be asking different questions about the media? Should we be asking different questions about the power dynamics of the media, of technology, and of the broader landscape? Where should African media sit in the global ecosystem generally? Where have we sat all along? Is this an opportunity to change our position, considering that only a fraction of Africa's continent is connected to the digital society? There's an opportunity there. So we need to be thinking differently. It's only natural that with every new development, we meet it with resistance, with rejection. We've seen that all through the years. But we have enough information at this point in time to change the narrative about how we consider and navigate some of these tools. And I'd like to see more of that type of discussion happening. We're talking AI policies. Europe, the USA have developed their AI policies that fit the needs of those contexts. How are we addressing AI policies in our newsrooms? Do they accommodate language? Do they accommodate the different contexts within our countries? Do they accommodate the different social dynamics that exist in the different countries? Uganda is very different from Kenya, for example. So these are some of the opportunities, small maybe, but have big impact on how we navigate the media landscape with the acknowledgement of the role that AI plays, an AI that is again shifting very, very quickly. Like Bill Dan mentioned earlier, the AI of 2023 is not the AI of 2025, let alone the AI of 2026. So we need to be a whole lot more progressive, a whole lot more quicker in how we attend to these things, but a whole lot more open in how we perceive AI, not necessarily as the annihilation, right, of journalism, but perhaps as an untapped opportunity for the continent.
So clearly you yeah, it happens. I think our mics are yet to get into the era of AI and minimize on the kind of disruption that it is. Juliet there makes a very impassioned presentation, but for purposes of context, those just joining us, she's a digital rights advocate and researcher with a background in journalism and communication. Yes, we know we don't introduce our guests, but it's important for folks to have a bit of a sense of who's speaking to them. I'll turn to you, Raymond, not Mujuni, but Raymond Amumpire, who is a lawyer. And for these conversations, I try as much as possible to carry out experiments on the go. And so for purposes of easing my role or my duty on the podcast, I chose that I will, for the most part, take use of AI to generate the questions I have to put across to you. Maybe then it will make more succinct sense to me. And so I did ask an AI tool that I'm seated with you, Raymond, who is a lawyer that's, into all this stuff of making sure that we see law and tech, the convergence of law and tech, and what that, portends for good journalism. And the AI told me, say, well, you may need to ask Raymond on matters to do with, say, when we as journalists get into the AI world, hook, line, and sinker, don't we risk issues such as copyright infringement, authorship and ownership, plagiarism, data protection? Questions abound as who owns what you publish or say having used AI? Is it you who has published, the one who has the byline? Is it the media house on which it has been, or the platform on which it has been published to say it? Or is it the AI content creator or the author that's quoted without attribution? Let's start from there.
Thank you so much, Simon. And for the issue of attribution, especially looking at the intellectual property that inheres in the content that is generated by media houses, whether it's print media, whether it's television, or even radio stations, because I know majority of us who are in media houses are interacting with these AI tools and using them to make our life easier. As said earlier, AI is developing at a non-linear speed, so everything is happening very, very fast. But we've had these conversations on intellectual property and content, especially the issues of attribution. Personally, I harbor the thought that attribution should be given not to attribution does not inhere in, say, maybe the big tech companies such as OpenAI that presents to us ChatGPT, or Anthropic that gives us Claude, or other platforms as has been mentioned before. But I believe it does inhere in the person who is seated behind, that is actually giving commands to these algorithms to give the output. The AI systems on their own cannot generate a news story out of the blue. It will have to be someone in the newsroom who will prompt. Say maybe I have these facts, I've been covering this campaign, and I have these facts, but I want to write a very nice story in 500 words that will make page 2 tomorrow. How can I bring this out well? How can I do this and how can I do this? So AI as it is only proceeding on the data sets that is used to train it. But those data sets, especially for generative AI, it has the power to take in the instructions that we give it, just like we had fundamental GIGO in, for those who did computing, garbage in, garbage out. So the instruction that you give it, it will actually give you something. It will generate a response that is well structured for you. So for purposes of attribution, I believe we can always look to that attribution inhering in the person that is actually commanding these systems, because they are just tools that we have at our disposal. Before I take leave, the late great Raila Amolo Odinga passed on this year, unfortunately. And there is an artist in Kenya who used a prompt to generate the late Raila Odinga's picture, I think by the ocean with the sunset or something like that. And the IP office, which is the equivalent of our URSB here in Kenya, proceeded to award this person protection for that work. And so there was this discussion around, is it the person who has actually done this? Is it the person who has, is it the systems that have generated it? But Kenya has taken the direction where if I enter the prompt and I generate my thing, I actually have that IP inhering in me.
Just before I let on and switch off Shibang, it is just to say, I know for a fact, I have lived for quite some time, but I don't remember, maybe some people in this room could remember, a time when Uganda has 2 leading dailies. I don't remember a time when both dailies, I think it's been once, I can't remember the exact, where they have an exact same headline, word for word. Yet the journalists from those 2 publications attend similar events, are possibly seated next to each other, and even for some of them that have a strikingly good relationship, they even share notes. Do you envisage a situation where I am seated in the newsroom, say New Vision, I put in a command, and because I have a good relationship with Raymond, who happens to be at the Daily Monitor, we possibly have a nice way of thinking alike, that we could generate a story that almost comes out word for word, especially if we all have the ambition of having a story on page one, and we've told the algorithm, can you place me this story against these facts to make it to page one? And what would that look like?
Yeah, so I know also for a fact that when everyone logs into their platform, whichever platform you're using, and you feed it the same facts, you might actually attempt to give it the same instructions. So members in our audience can test this out. I doubt that ChatGPT is going to give the lady to my left and the gentleman to my right the same answers for the same story on the same facts. How you interact with it differs. So from time to time, the system is actually learning what you're doing. So yes, it uses your input and your prompts to also better its model on the answers it will give you. So it is very unlikely that a person registering for ChatGPT for the very first time and another person will likely have the same answer. We are maybe in different newsrooms. Some people could be in different geographical areas. So all these things are factored into that equation. So word for word, it might not be, but the gist might be the same. And that's why our professors, for those of us who are still in academia, have been querying most of us. They just look at your submissions, and before they even ask the AI checker, they know you've been to AI, because there are certain things that you will see that are usually common or seen in what you get when you actually prompt these models for that.
Interesting. Julie, I wanted to bring into the conversation on three things. The AI systems have at least three capabilities. One, to be generative, which is what they've talked about, that if you give it a prompt, it will generate a response. Number two is the pre-training, that it cannot give you a response that wasn't pre-trained before. So someone must have done the pre-training. And the third is the transformative element, that they transform already existing information. And it's on the transformative that I wanted to rest a little bit. Many newsrooms in Uganda, at least, are struggling financially. And yet many of the public AI systems take their information, use it for pre-training, and also use it in the transformative element. Is there a chance on God's earth that maybe the Monitor, New Vision, NTV, Dembe might one day tell Gemini or ChatGPT and say, please pay us for this particular information?
They should. Many newsrooms in the continent are sitting on very, very rich data, historical data, data that is not yet digitalized, but data that should be in the public domain, at least not for people in academia, students, ordinary citizens. Very, very rich sources of data. Some of it has made it in online spaces, some of it hasn't. Some of it is actually literally rotting away in some rooms, which is unfortunate. So there's an opportunity for digitalization. Those who are doing it, fantastic. Should it be made more publicly accessible to the various machine learning tools? Perhaps, as a way of maintaining that piece of historical information, especially from the continent. Because remember, a lot of our story has been told by others, but not by us. So it serves as an opportunity to get our information out, to be learned by these machines. So the information that they're feeding back to us is not information that still has a bit of a colonial twist to it, a bit of a Eurocentric feel to it. Yet we're sitting with the information right here in our closets. So this goes to some of what, it was actually a discussion that we had at a previous meeting around ownership of data and intellectual property. There's been a case by Anthropic where they scraped data from various sources, including literature, and fed that into their tools, and those are the tools that we're using. Some of it is paid for depending on the tier of platform that you're using. But the case was many of the owners demanded compensation, rightfully so. If this was 20, 30 years ago, they would have been compensated for the use of their work by a different entity. So they challenged them and demanded compensation. A lot of that work included work from the African continent. However, to date, I'm only aware about 3 or 4 authors who might, it's not definite that they'll receive compensation, who might receive compensation. And these are authors from Southern Africa. I'm sure there was text from Uganda that was scraped. I have not seen any mention of any Ugandan author getting compensation. Have you seen anything? No. So there are various power dynamics that are playing out in the AI ecosystem, in the intellectual property ecosystem, in the data ecosystem. Should a media house put out its information and demand compensation? That's a very gray area. Typically, you'd go out and pay for that newspaper, right? Even online content, you'd pay for it to access, to go past a firewall. So I have no clear answer for that, but I do think that we lose out when some of this information is kept in the closet. In the long run, the information that is generated will be information that is skewed to narratives that may not be beneficial for us, yet we have the actual story.
Maybe to ask, there are some stories that are really very particular. So for example, and sorry to use this example too, if you go to any AI prompt now and ask it, which NRM politician stole an underpant from Uchumi, that's a very particular story written by someone on this panel for one particular newspaper. There should be some level of particularity for that person to say, this is my content, this is my information, can you please hand it back to me? Or can I at least share in the proceeds of the money that you're making off this information? So if newsrooms are able to prove particularity in some of those issues, is it possible to hold the big AI companies accountable?
I think in some jurisdictions, there's an attempt at doing that. Australia has, you might be able to speak the legalese to it. Australia has challenged big tech, at least, not AI necessarily, not AI platforms, but the social media platforms on a model that where they demand compensation for any content that is featured in those on those platforms. They make money out of content of media houses. So rightfully so, media houses have said, we want to cut that. And what you're saying speaks to that, but only with AI being the focus. I do think that it would be good. How it plays out, I would have absolutely no idea. Where does Raymond come and start telling Sam Altman, I want my money, you're using my content, which is very valid. It's a very valid argument. They're making money off your content, right? And you're not getting the necessary recognition, right? It is something that this is the opportunity for African content creators, African media to step up and demand a cut of what the broader digital ecosystem is benefiting from. So there's an opportunity there, okay? How it would play out, I can say specifically, but you're right in saying that I want a claim or two of the proceeds that emerge out of the use of my work.
Yes, it's really an interesting conversation, especially around the aspects of platform accountability, but also compensation. So recently, the AI companies, after a lot of noise was made about the issues of copyright infringement, but also the issues of, you're just using my information to train your models and so on. They have tailored their models and modified them with an option for any user anywhere in the world to opt out. So you can ask that I would like to opt out of my data being used in the training of your models, because some people using models upload information that is proprietary. I might have a contract from a client, let's say MTN, and because I'm so pressed for time, I feed this contract into ChatGPT. But that contract has information that could be injurious if it got out. It's information that is protected maybe as a secret for MTN and they believe that there is that attorney client privilege. But I'm using this model without knowing that I have to opt out. That goes into the data sets as well. It's now going to be used to train other models somewhere that a rival sitting at the legal department of maybe Airtel will prompt and receive something similar to that. Now, on the issue of um, holding these platforms accountable, I was a complainant together with three other colleagues, Frank, Lenny, and Awino. We happened to drag Google, but this was unrelated. It's a data protection and privacy action to the data regulator against Google that was decided in July this year. But we understand that for us to have AI, we need data and compute. So data privacy is something we cannot divorce from the conversation. We dragged Google, big tech, to the regulator. But the journey was something that taught us a lot about where the global south sits, or where it actually stands, or where it squats in terms of the power dynamics when it comes to holding these people with so much money and so much influence accountable. Google currently has so many users, it has so much money, and it makes a lot of profit that it can sustain GDPs of certain nations in Africa. Google donates to government programs in certain nations. It supports infrastructure, backbone, and whatever. Then you have laws that say you can hold them accountable, good laws, nonetheless, with mandate holders in the law, such as the Personal Data Protection Office, which did a very good job by taking a stance, although we had to push so hard for it. Such an office that has a budget, when you look at the budgetary vote, of less than 30,000 USD, having to hold a company that makes 30,000 USD across Africa in seconds becomes a little bit challenging for them. So you find they are holding them with these gloves, but you have rights that are actually being infringed, whether it's intellectual property rights for the journalist, whether it's privacy rights for any other person that is a journalist, but also an everyday citizen. Holding these guys accountable is something that we have not done before. It's something that we are learning. It's something that's new, but it's not something that is as clear-cut as it is in the laws. I'm happy Australia is doing this, but I'm waiting for the day when Uganda can actually take a stand and say, New Vision Daily Monitor, we do not want you to actually train our models on this much information. Or someone drags them to court, for this much and gets something favorable. The other thing, before I take leave of that, is apart from institutional capacity being limited, you also have knowledge caps. So you will drag OpenAI to the High Court in Kampala, here, commercial division or civil division, whichever you choose. But the bench before which you're going to has no idea what AI is. Sorry for this. They have no idea what AI is. They do not know how to use AI. Some of them have never sat in a cyber law class. Not that you need to sit in cyber law to understand what cyber law is, but they do not know how to articulate and preside over some of these matters. So your case will be dead on arrival, for lack of a better word. Or if you actually get a win, it will be a flimsy win, not the win that you actually wanted from that.
Very much. I think you make very interesting conversations, but now let's make it a conversation that now speaks to the realism that we know. Raymond and I, in our starting time in the electronic media, we were young, handsome, bouncing men as news anchors. And we have seen in some industries where it's all about looks and how you sound, and AI being able to create these individuals. We've seen incredibly successful musicians with great hits, good bodies, incredible dance moves, but they are not human. They are AI created. And so we fear that maybe newsrooms such as NTV, having looked around the scope of individuals, they just put an AI tool and they create a super gorgeous news anchor with all the features every news viewer would want to see. And they create a super non-existent human in real sense with flesh and blood, but they show up on our screens every 9 p.m. to read the news and captivate the whole country. They sound good, they look good. And that's where many people are worried that in some of our jobs going to be taken by these now we used to call them holograms, but now they appear as human beings, as human as it can be. And I'll put that to you, Jolie, before maybe the lawyer comes in. Doesn't that, from your advocacy and research, pose a real existential threat to human interaction? Doesn't it portend a huge worry for news anchors in this room who are looking at creating a future to be on our silver screens until they become gray themselves, like Wolf Blitzer and Christiana Mampo?
I wonder how many people know Wolf Blitzer and Hamampo Romeo. But anyway, they're very good media folk. This is a very interesting question, right? Because now it brings to reality the gaps, the Gen X versus Gen Z, Gen Beta coming along, because all of them are consuming or have consumed media in different ways. The older generation there were Wolf Blitzer, Larry King. That's whom they knew. We got another generation that understood media in a completely different way, media personalities in a completely different way. What's common between these two groups was that these were human beings. You saw them at a particular time, you watched them on a TV screen, not so much on your phone. That is where the next generation came. And they were watching news on their phones, play on demand. Not so much at 7 o'clock, you're going to be there. You miss the 7 o'clock news, get it at another time. Versus a generation that is watching content produced, maybe not by a journalist in the traditional sense, but by somebody who knows how to tell a story. Fast forward to a generation that is now possibly inkling towards AI-generated images, AI voice. But at the same time, what's happening there is people are realizing this is not a human. I have so much tech going on around me. I appreciate the holograms and the AI voice, but I still want a human being. So that is the current tension at the moment. When you go to some of those news or content that is fully AI generated, when you read through the comments, you'll see many people being put off by the AI voice, by the non-human presentation that is featured there. So that's a dynamic that we're beginning to see. But I think the younger generation will be more acclimatized to the AI voice than those of a different era. Another thing that is coming up is even here for some media houses, when they do their voiceovers, and in our Ugandan accent, there's a tweaking that some of these systems are doing into a slight AI voice. So it's a what's the word? Yes, it's homogeneous in narration. So platforms do that to make their content appear more accessible. But it puts some of us off because we're like, but I know you and you don't speak like that. What's going on here? So in the back end, there's some features that you can enable and disable to maintain your actual voice. I don't know if that was being tested out, or if it has become a standard feature. But for some time, there's a bit of tweaking being done. Raymond would go out, do his story, upload it, but it doesn't come out quite as Raymond. So there was a resistance to such type of stories where the AI voice was coming in to make Raymond more accessible to an American audience, for example. But Raymond wasn't creating content for an American audience, he was creating content for us here in Uganda. So we were getting put off and the Americans are not watching it. So those are some of the dynamics that are coming through. But yeah, I just think that as tech evolves, but also as those technologies become more refined, more human-like, and the AI voice gets lost and becomes very, very human, it picks up our intonations. We might not even notice some of these things. And
before he comes in, I have been lucky to live through generations of change. I remember the production that would go out from Radio Uganda to cover a live church service On the team was a technician like my father who had to make sure he has to keep the line going with Uganda Posts and Telecommunications. There was the guy rolling the cables. There was the guy fixing the microphones. There was the guy doing this. And then by the time he gets down, the actual reporter, Charles Canary Mugisha, there were about 16 people. Right now, for you to cover a live church event, you just need to go yourself and your mobile phone. So it means 15 other jobs have been lost. For a production such as this, there would be a camera person holding the camera, then there's the sound guy, then there's the other one holding the deck that has a pneumatic tape. Those are 4 people around just getting an image of one person. Now, today, those 4 people have no jobs. So in other words, if my father lived, he would possibly not have a job at Radio Uganda because his skill has been taken over by the advancement of technology, and everything has become smaller, from even the microphones to the Nagra players to everything. At the time all this was changing, I mean, we embraced it as technology. Oh, there was even the part where, by the time I started reading news, we were revolutionary in the sense that our backgrounds were now chroma keys. It was a green screen, and you're advised as a news anchor, please don't wear green, because when you wear green, your body will disappear into the background. But there were people whose job was to create the background, the backdrop. Now, those lost their jobs because the rest was character generated by the computer. Again, I have seen jobs lost. I'm worried now that the same is going to happen. We may optimize voices and want a human touch, but like you said, the Gen Zs don't want to know. They want to go with what's trending. And for me, that's the worry that I would want us to speak to, or possibly even advocate against, that advance as you may, but don't remove the human element.
You know, maybe before Julie comes in, a powerful life example. I particularly go to the Monitor to read the columns there. I realized I have very little time to read the columns. So I've been getting the columns and putting them into the Listen AI and asking it, please give me a Morgan Freeman voice. Give me this voice. And it's nearly very accurate. It's nearly very accurate. So I think 4 days ago, I asked the Listen AI, can you do this in Kadu Balunaba's voice? And it asked who that was. I specifically went to CBS, downloaded some things and fed it into the AI. You'll be impressed at how good it gets with his voice narrating a Daily Monitor column. Now, I don't know if that's unethical, but I know that it serves my needs. I've paid my subscription at the Monitor, so I'm not stealing the content. It's just the way I want the content delivered. So maybe also speak to the ethics of it.
Did you pay or request permission from Kadu for the use of the
Unfortunately not. And I
they're
hope
not
he
aware.
doesn't find out.
Someone's right here using your information. Yeah, so there are all these concerns, but I think in that case, you'll notice that you had to go in to make the request for that specific voice, right? And you had a place to go access that voice, but it was meeting your very, very specific needs. But what we're seeing in the broader landscape is tools that are just that word again.
Homogeneous.
Yeah, making voices homogeneous.
Yes.
Hey. And to the detriment of consumers here in the continent. As society evolves, jobs evolve. Some of the things I was doing when I first started out in journalism, I'm no longer doing. But we were taught that in campus. So it goes back to what is being taught in schools. Are they in tandem with the now era that we're living in? So you're not teaching students, kids, skills that they're obviously not going to use. Are we teaching ethics in digital? Are we teaching data privacy practices? Are we teaching how to navigate some of the online harms as part of the media curricula? So this discussion is part of a broader ecosystem. So we shouldn't be teaching skills that we know, like I was pointed out, dead on arrival. Have we adapted, or are we adapting? Making sure that students are future ready, per se. So that's one area that I am very concerned about, because in some instances, like I pointed out, you go take a case to court and the judges themselves are very out of touch with the reality of the digital society. And to some effect, some of the academics are very much in that ball. resisting the use of AI, as opposed to saying, okay, there's something here. How do we make the most of it? How do we navigate this to put out a student who is ready for the world, ready for the ecosystem that they're going to find out there?
So just a warning to my namesake. You admitted to a potential, to liability under a potential suit, but hopefully Chatham House will protect him this time. Yeah, all that. So personally, I think one, it's a reality of life. The future of work is changing. How we approach work, how we do work, but also how we live is changing. So the lived experiences of a journalist today are different from the lived experiences of a journalist 30 years ago on Radio Uganda. I was not so fortunate to listen to Radio Uganda. I'm from these other generations that the old man usually asks what we are doing. But I do think and I do believe that it would be a Luddite conversation for us to say that AI is going to, technology is shifting, how it's affecting the newsroom is shifting. Therefore, jobs are missing and we should be wary. I just have a simple call to whoever, sits in the C-suite at different media houses. If you can provide institutional support to your staff, it would be very great. So that at least they have the digital literacy to interact with some of these tools and make their news and storytelling better. But then also, as Raymond was asking previously, there is a lot of contempt. There is low appetite for AI-generated content right now on the internet. Be it a YouTube ad for Tai Chi, that appears on every video that is AI-generated, or even big brand companies, like Pepsi, McDonald's, using AI for marketing and phasing out their marketing departments. They have faced a lot of backlash and they have had to remove and pull back some of the ads that they used AI to generate. So the appetite is really not there. It's still low. Humans want to interact with humans, although machines make our lives easier. They don't want to listen to a machine. But as we go on, as technology progresses and improves, we'll hardly tell if it's a human or a machine. It's going to get to that point where it's really too good. We can't tell and we'll just consume it anyway.
So, Raymond, in our bid to ensure that we manage time and keep it within the context of A Cofee, we may have to introduce in the element of at least one person from the audience who, upon the program, should give us some kind of audience perspective. And this is no less than Herbert Benonoluka, who is an award-winning journalist and has edited for different platforms, has also seemed to have transcended the era of where the most advanced tool of enabling journalism was a Google search, and now he's faced with an AI generation ability to write a story flawlessly that makes his job as an editor almost non-existent. So maybe Herbert, from having listened to these conversations from an activist who is into journalism but has seen the advent of AI taking its road, and then a legal brain, of course, who is playing from his own generation. I mean, he just admitted he's never had anything called Radio Uganda. So if you tell him that there was once a presenter who would come in every Sunday and say all Ugandans from A to Z, habari gani, to you that is as good as Spanish. Now, you may need to just bridge for us the gap and share with us what are some, from where you sit, some of the existential threats, if at all, or if there are any great opportunities that journalism can pick from the advent of AI. Herbert Benon, I think it's also important that you stand for purposes of getting onto our platform in terms of video. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Thank you, Simon and Raymond and the panelists. My role is really to represent, in a sense, the journalism community in sharing what is happening in the newsrooms. And by coincidence, so maybe for introductory purposes, I work with the Global Investigative Journalism Network as the Africa editor. And many times I interact with small newsrooms that are trying to maximize the output of a very small teams. And because of that, they have had to adopt AI faster than most others. I think legacy media has a bit of a fear to adopt some of the things as fast as possible. But the smaller newsrooms, especially the investigative journalism newsrooms, are trying to do a lot more of this. And by coincidence, yesterday, GIJN's Africa newsletter has a series of story items on AI for African newsrooms. So there are lots of resources in that story item, resources from, if I can just pick that up, from the Pulitzer Center. They have an AI Spotlight series from the 2025 Journalism AI Festival. We curated all these resources, which happened in November, early November, and Google's AI tools for journalists, and then AFP's online course on how to verify AI-generated content. There's all this covered in our newsletter. If you think Google GIJN Africa newsletter, you'll be able to find that. Now, very quickly, I think a lot of the conversations you've had here are a bit abstract. You're talking about AI without actually focusing on, what does it do or what can it do? And I think that is where I want to come from, about what journalists can use AI for, or what I have personally used it for, what some newsrooms have used it for, and how it can help. So there's this fear that AI, and I think it was mentioned here, that AI can is going to take a lot of jobs. But I think AI, we should look at it more as a tool to enhance the work that we do. It's a complementary tool to those that are already in use. I mean, we use, when we interact with data, for instance, we try to interrogate this data to help us do our reporting better. We are trying to find trends, we are trying to find information that will help us make sense of certain things, contextualize certain things. And that is where we should be also looking at, how do we use AI to enhance our work. We should be looking at it as a tool that we can use we can interrogate it to help us bring out the information that we're able to use. So if we want to do background research, it can help you refine some of the research that you do. I was recently, working with a team to do stories on Uganda and the Great Lakes, the conflicts that are happening. And one of the things I tried to do, because I had got my own list of sources, and then I fed into AI, a prompt that, these are the sources I have. Who else or which other sources which other sources have a better understanding of this subject? And I was amazed, just to find, sources with a better understanding of certain issues that we wanted to ask people about, and to check some documents about. And I was able to get that information. I even the contacts that I eventually got of those sources, I got them through prompting AI. So if I had just depended on human sourcing for this kind of information, I would not have been able to do that. But with the help of AI, I was able to do that. So doing background research, refining sources, improving our headlines, because again, AI will, depend on certain algorithms to tell you which words would be better captured by, if you do, if you want to get words that are better captured when people are doing, search engine optimization, you should be able to use AI to capture that. Then editorial workflows, many times we're using, we still use, many of us, our old methods of handling things editorially, but with the help of AI, you can still optimize your workflow and become a bit more efficient. And then audience engagement. I think this is the one where we have used AI longest, because most websites have, the comment sections. Editors can't look through all those comments, but you can feed onto your website certain keywords and say, if this is captured in a comment, you can automate the deletion of that. So audience engagement can also be done with the help of AI. Then it can also help you to do manual work. Journalists and newsrooms, you can do manual work. In the past, Idris Chigund over there, and I would do interviews of maybe 1 hour, 2 hours, and then sit down overnight to transcribe that interview. Today I can feed that recording onto a tool. It is able to do the transcription within an hour or less, and then all I have to do is edit that, listen all over again, just to make sure that every word, every name is captured accurately. We still have journalists doing transcribing interviews overnight, or transcribing interviews, spending 2-3 hours to transcribe interviews, which is a waste of time in this era where you have AI to help you. So we can do transcribing of interviews. We can brainstorm ideas and be able to refine them. We can do editing to an extent to help us also do that. Data visualization. We can do collaboration within newsrooms, between newsrooms or journalists and experts, between journalists in different countries. All those are different ways we can use it. There is, for instance, a tool called Google Pinpoint. I don't know how many people have used Google Pinpoint. If I just check, anybody has used Google Pinpoint? No way. Are you guys serious? Sorry? All right. Check right now. Check for Google Pinpoint and see the kind of resources that are available through Google Pinpoint that can help you do your, help you improve how you do your journalism. There are tools for visualization, there are tools for transcription, there are tools for a lot of things which you can use Google Pinpoint for. And there are several others. Usually when I do either speak or do trainings, I share lots of open source investigation tools. There's whole sets of OSINT tools that can now help you do so much of the work that one, it may not be possible to do with just using the ordinary tools we use. Two, it is taking us to a different level to do the kind of interrogation of data, of available facts, to do the kind of fact-checking which has not been available to us or to some of our newsrooms.
So in other words, sorry to interject at this point, because we're still within the mic. We're still within the production window of Grab A Cofee, and we brought you in, not just audience perspective, but as a practitioner, because many have always argued there's nothing for us without us, Benon. And so the summation of what you have taken us through is that AI is here. AI is useful. AI is an enabler. And contrary to what many have thought, it isn't the threat to good journalism as we have thought. And so what we're going to do, Raymond and I, we're going to conclude with Grab a Coffee production and then pass it on now when we close out for purposes of good production, because we're looking at AI in the situation of production. Then we'll leave you to make your presentation and conclude, and then take one or two questions from the audience, because I want to believe that they should be in position to greatly interact with you before we go in for our tea break. So I'll turn it back to my partner in crime, Raymond. Would you need to take us through a two-tab of a conclusion in as far as this conversation is concerned?
Thank you, Simon. I think we've had a chance to touch a bit of everything. We had very little time, but we've spoken about the opportunities, the platforms, the content. We've spoken about copyright, plagiarism. We had a chance to speak about the ethics too. We haven't had a chance to touch very much on how the accurate use of AI and the ethics within the newsroom. But I think we'll have that conversation much later. But first of all, I want to say thank you to you. You guys can clap so that they hear it in the podcast. Thank you so much for being on the podcast with us. This has been very informative for us. And we hope that when some of our listeners reach out to you privately, that you can answer them. But also maybe to ask, where else are these conversations happening with you practitioners as your parting shots, so that people can find you where those conversations are happening?
Thank you and congratulations on the podcast. This type of work makes me very excited to see more African content coming into online spaces, content that can be used as a point of reference, including for the various AI tools that we have emerging. As CIPESA, this year our State of Internet Freedom in Africa report focused on AI and digital democracy. I'd encourage us all to have a look into it. AI it's playing a role everywhere, including in democratic processes through to the newsroom. So that is something that we need to be very, very aware of, the interactions that are happening unseen and those that are rather blatant. Personally, I think we need to be aware of the power dynamics that exist with AI in the AI ecosystem, including in the continent. How are we engaging with it? Are we proactive in looking out for some of these tools as practitioners? How are we using these tools for fact-checking, for just trying to make sense of the digital society as well? I think the onus is on us to step out and explore as opposed to waiting to be told what to do. That's the only way, or at least that's one of the ways in which we can better interrogate and have a stronger say in the digital society as individuals and as media practitioners. Thank you.
Thanks for having us on Grab a Coffee. And I'm from the generation that does this. So congratulations on a very successful podcast. As I part, Juliet has already talked about the State of Internet Freedom in Africa report by CIPESA. It's an important resource, and I would urge everyone else to look at it. UCC recently gave us its 2024 report, I think last week. So we have interesting facts in there that we can also look at. I just have a call to action or two. One, as journalists in our collective groups, wherever we have collective action, if we can push for policy reform, because Uganda has not made that much of a headway in terms of policy formulation. And we understand that everything flows from research, but it's also usually enabled by what our policies look like. Are these policies going to help us as journalists use AI better and make more of AI? The other thing, we have a moral duty to remain optimistic. Let's push to find out more on how we can use these tools, not to just remain in the dark and say, oh, we're being threatened by AI, it's going to take our jobs, Let's listen to perspectives that encourage us to actually live with this technology, because it's not going anywhere. In fact, some of the big tech companies that bring these platforms are acquiring media houses in the United States for so much of billion shillings. So it shows that there is a very huge confluence between AI and that. Lastly, we are in the election window. Vote for people that are going to discuss policies on AI that promote journalism and make sure journalism survives. Don't vote people that are, okay, let me not make a call for that, but please ask that person coming for the vote, what do they know about AI? They are going to parliament to legislate. How much information do they have? What is their ambition for journalism and its interaction with emerging technologies like AI? Yeah, thank you.
Maybe you should have taken it from the angle of those of you who are AI and tech savvy should have offered yourself for election, as opposed to the kind of people that we have in the playing ground. I mean, you use your same analogy, GIGO. Exactly. So, and yes, that indeed brings us to a close of our Grab a Coffee podcast edition, special edition in collaboration with the African Center for Media Excellence and the Media Focus on Africa, having a conversation within the precincts of the Uganda Media Week 2021. From wherever it is that you grab your podcast, it's always a pleasure to have you listening in to Grab a Coffee. For now, it's a wrap.